Guessing that we're talking to each other right now, but
All right.
let's kick this off. It is 9:31, so we're actually violating ADHD time here. Uh, and I will say that I know that my video and my audio may be a little bit out of sync, but we wanted to share this with multiple pages and didn't really have a way to do that without this. And we get our first comment from Ada. And hello to you to Salmia Harish. Hello and welcome. So it's funny how much better we did this last month or 2 months ago when we just had one Facebook chat to monitor, right? But let's start it up and welcome to Ask the ADHD Coaches. My name is Keith Griffin. I have a website called This ADHD Life. I have a YouTube channel called This ADHD Life, and I am also an ADHD coach based in the Atlanta, Georgia area, and an ADHD adult, an ADA volunteer, an ADA board member, and I could keep saying ADHD-related things till I'm blue in the face. If you see me looking over to my left, it's because Renee is virtually over on my left. So Renee, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Renee Crook. I am an ADHD coach as well, and also an adult with Inattentive type ADHD. And I also am a volunteer with ADA, the Adult or Attention Deficit Disorder Association, and facilitator of support groups support group there, and one here in person in the city of Bellevue, which is where I live in Washington, for parents. And then, yeah, all around volunteering other areas as well. So definitely got our hands in a lot of ADHD ponds, but also non-ADHD ponds.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did this, I guess, back in March, beginning of March. I can't believe it's been so long since we've done it.
Yeah.
We didn't have a ton of questions that time, and what I understand from the way things work is, you have to do these types of events on a fairly regular basis before people start engaging and asking questions. But if you're watching and you have a question about ADHD anywhere you're watching, if you're on ADA, post it on that page at it's the facebook.com/ADHD adult, I believe. It's on my page, This ADHD Life, and it's on your page at Added Perspective Coaching. And we actually do have a first question. I'm a mom of a 7-year-old. He's having difficulty paying attention at school on a regular basis. So I'm guessing there, the question is, how do you pay attention? I'm actually looking at 4 ways that I sometimes pay attention, but how do you pay attention?
Well, for me, it's there's kind of a lot of self-talk going on usually too. It depends on the environment. I don't tend to have as much trouble paying attention to other people talking. So it's more, when I'm trying to do specific tasks that I struggle staying focused. So that's a little different to me when there's a task at hand and I get to be, I need to be working on something and stay focused on just that one thing. I find that challenging because there's so many, we notice everything. It's not, as we've said before, it's not an attention deficit. Honestly, it's an attention filter problem where you notice everything. It's hard to tune it out. But I know at school it's super hard for those little people because everybody's moving, everybody's doing something different, and so I think it can be really challenging. Also, I tend to sit in the front actually when I go to. Speaking of I was thinking of location when I was thinking about the classroom, that for me, I always sit in like the front or second row at conferences, at meetings, at all that kind of stuff, because I need to filter out as many distractions as possible, and that helps me when I'm close. And I think that's one huge factor that helps me a lot. I don't mind being up close because I know I learn better there.
Yeah, and that's funny because I always used to sit in the back of the class. And maybe if I'd sat in front, I would have been focused more. I am fully into fidget toys these days. So I mentioned I have 4. I actually have 5, but one's not meant to be a fidget. The problem with these things, so this is one of them. The problem is that everybody that didn't have ADHD decided that they needed them for focused attention. So schools sometimes block these now. Like you can't bring a fidget spinner to school, and I have a little mini one. And hello to Mark as well. Thanks for listening. And joining in. If you have questions, let us know. I have this neat little square one that you can use from Brookstone. One of the things at the last ADHD conference I got was from the Gao School, and it's just a piece of like wire with plastic over it, and you can take this and like form it into a bunch of different things.
Fun.
But so before I use these, I actually used toys that were not meant for it. So while I reach behind me into what I call my box of tricks here, I actually use things like these stress balls. Rather than using them to squeeze, I'd toss them back and forth, toss them up in the air, stuff like that. And let me see if you can guess, Renee, what this happens to be.
Oh, is that like one of the sides to hold like up a laptop or something, or a tablet?
It isn't, but that could be a good use for it. It's actually a doorstop from the Container Store.
That was going to be my next choice. I was like, oh, that's a really fancy doorstop. It's got lots of ridges for traction. Huh. Okay.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so I use it. This one I use on my office door when the windows are open in the house. If I don't wedge it open, then suddenly the door slams.
Yeah.
But what I've found is grabbing it and just like compressing it in my hands kind of helps, and just playing with it. And so the point to all of this is, if you can't use a fidget spinner, maybe there's some household stuff that he could bring into school to help him have his own fidget, like maybe a rubber band he could be playing with, because a lot of times we need some physical movement in order for our brain to engage. And that's one idea. And the other one that I have is make sure he's getting plenty of exercise, because exercise can help, not as much as ADHD medicines, but it has been shown scientifically that it definitely does help with ADHD symptoms. And with schools cutting recesses these days, maybe getting him to go for a run in the morning, or, doing something like that, making sure he's kind of physically exhausted, believe it or not, can help the mind, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends also too. Maybe I can't see the comments on my other feed, so you have to help me with that. But something I'm wondering about is if she has any other information or insights as to times of day that he does really well, or during certain activities that he can focus. So because then that maybe will help, figure out how. What about that is helpful? Is it the time of day? Is it the activity? Is it the location? Are they on the carpet? Are they in their desks? Or does he get to stand? Those kinds of things. And as a former elementary school teacher of that age group, I'm with first and second graders, they need to move a lot. They need a lot of breaks anyway, any kid at that age, but even more so if they have trouble focusing. But I think certainly, finding things that are interesting and keeping him engaged, and hopefully the teacher is willing and able to communicate with you about ways that could help him stay engaged, with frequent breaks, or having him run errands or something built in, so without embarrassment or shame, that there's opportunities for him to move and get active and take breaks. And I used to do that. I used to have a kid run something to the book to the library, or run next door and send a message to a neighbor teacher, or or everybody take a break. It's good for everybody. I did a lot of movement breaks. I used a lot of music, and I used a lot of things like that in my classroom. That was before I knew at first that I had ADHD. Got diagnosed as a teacher, to be honest. But yeah, so I think that can be really helpful.
Yeah, and she mentions as a follow-up he can't focus, but I really believe keeping his hands occupied could help. A story that I'm sure I've told before, I may have told it back in March, is when I first started coaching school, the first day I was trying to take great notes. I was sitting at this exact same desk. And the following week, I just started to get bored, and so I started redoing the underneath of my desk, and I learned more from that call than the first call. And from then on, I had to be doing something around the house in terms of being able to focus. And hello to Ada, the official page. Someone is behind the scenes saying hello, Ada family. Hello to you.
Hello.
Mark says that his mind switches on, and then after like 10 minutes switches off. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. He also mentions that he sits near the back to focus. I always sat near the back so I didn't have to focus, or so that I wasn't necessarily seeing that I wasn't, or being seen that I didn't get focused. But Mark, I'd love to hear what you mean by that. Like, does it always switch on and then off, or is it only when there's stuff that's boring, right? Like when I was playing around with my automation of coaching contracts for teen clients the other day, my mind was on. It was like 4 hours on, and so it didn't switch off. But if I'm dealing with something kind of boring, it's going to switch off.
Absolutely. I think there's two things that I was thinking of with that, with the 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, is if you know that that's how your brain works, and if it's consistent, one thing that I've had to learn, and I actually just recently had a pretty powerful experience with kind of going with the flow, going with my brain instead of fighting it and making it do what it didn't really feel like doing, which was kind of floating around from activity to activity. And so if you know that works, that's how your brain kind of functions. You maybe have to build in tasks, like little sprints like that, and if you want to change that, if you want to improve it and it's not working for you for some reason, then figuring out, one of the things that I had to do was use timers and honestly kind of extend practice, like longer stretches, so I could kind of, give myself, work for a little while on, 15 minutes and then take a break and do something. For me, I am really energized by music, and so I would play a song and I'd get up and I'd, dance around and so I'd get that kind of kinesthetic break, and it really wakes me up, and then get back to the task, set a timer to get back to work too, because we can get distracted and do other things. So yeah, kind of that transitioning is super important. I'm curious about what type of ADHD he has though, because I think maybe that's also the distinction, is that some people instinctively move in the back if they have more of the hyperactive type of ADHD, because they need to move and fidget more, and allowing you to do that and know that you're not trapped, that you could stand up if you needed to, or if you could get out, or if you have any kind of anxiety around social situations, also can really ramp up and make your brain less able to focus because it's so worried about all the other stuff going on. I had a friend of mine who was like that she really loved learning and going to workshops and conferences and things like that, but her anxiety would just go through the roof, and she didn't really realize that was what it was. She would just get super fidgety, super anxious. She couldn't focus because her brain was kind of being hijacked by the anxiety, and she kind of felt like she was like most of us as adults who are kind of in the neurotypical world. In those, when you're not at an ADHD conference, it's totally okay. But other conferences, you're like, you need to sit still and stay, not be distracting, and people aren't as tolerant. And so learning to sit in the back or on the end so you can get up and move, so that your brain can kind of decompress and know that it has an out if it needs it, can be really helpful for some people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to mention, you mentioned the type of ADHD. Because a lot of people are still confused, and who blames them, right? Because it seems like the DSM people that change the diagnosis all the time. It's all ADHD. You can be a combined type, which means you're both hyperactive and inattentive. You can be just hyperactive, or you can be just inattentive. I personally call that ADHD with the silent H. So, I don't know if that applies or not, but that's a good point. Is someone that's hyperactive might have different struggles with focus than someone that's inattentive. I did know
reasons, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed Annette said hello. Ada's a great organization. I agree. And I thank Ada for letting me push the stream over to their Facebook page tonight.
Hi, Annette.
I did actually ask permission, and Dwayne said, yes, you are more than welcome to do that. And it's sort of an experiment as well. As the technical guy for Ada, I'm always interested in seeing what's new, and maybe we'll start doing some webinars out here as well. And someone from your page, I love the comment. Is great to hear something new. I can't pronounce your name. Femi, Fehmi. Thank you for joining. I'm not going to try to pronounce the rest because I have to.
Banja. Hi, Femi. Well,
awesome.
Great to see you.
Mark,
from my past lives.
Oh, really?
Yes, he used to work with me, or technically for me, work with me. Great to
Very
have
cool. And you know what I noticed? I was noticing in my video stream that I actually had two of these because one was sitting on my printer and it was sitting on my printer from a call I had earlier today where I was walking around this room playing with it. Um,
So you could use it as a device holder, huh? You've got two.
you could. You know what else I found today? I was on another call. I was in the living room and I picked up this new dog toy that we bought and I started tossing it around with myself. So
It's multi-purpose. I love it.
yeah, exactly. Mark mentions that he has quite a bit of anxiety, that he's doing something wrong in day-to-day life. Also, brain switches off with the boring stuff. I only learned I have ADD recently. It was as a child. I love to hear people the same as me. And yeah, hi, welcome to the club. If we had
It's the
T-shirts, we'd send you one.
ADHD family. It's
Yeah,
a beautiful, fun family.
it is. It's very colorful. We get things done, right? We just happen to get things done at the last minute. Like, my entire promotion scheme for this event happened today. But some of that's knowing your audience. Like if I had sent something out 3 weeks ago, who was going to remember? Um, but myself, I have anxiety comorbid with my ADHD. And that's something to mention is like there's a lot of stuff that can be sort of partnered with the ADHD, right, Renee?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many coexisting conditions. I hate the word that, most of professionals use, the comorbid, but that means the same thing, coexisting. Yeah, and I think that many of us, it's very, very unusual for there just to be ADHD. Because at some point or another, especially, for both Keith and I, were diagnosed as adults. So having, a whole lifetime of not knowing why things were so hard and why you felt so different, and why there was just so many feelings of, well, for me anyway, feelings of failure, feelings of just not measuring up. I mean, and that, I mean, not even just feeling that, but being told that you're not measuring up, the report cards and other, expectations that just, yeah, anyway, so I think that's super, super challenging. And through that process, there's often a development of, anxiety or depression because of untreated ADHD. But then even with treatment of ADHD can also continue to be a problem, or I know that needs to be treated in addition to your ADHD.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny. This brings up something that I want to share with you. And while there's a little lull in the questions, hey, let's just chat, right? But
Yeah.
I was actually a client on one of the practicum calls for the school that we both attended, the ADD Coach Academy. And the topic I brought um, was that I wanted to get into a regular podcasting schedule. I haven't published anything really since January. And it came down to many different things, but one of the things it came down to is I'm a little afraid to be not presenting myself as an expert necessarily, but, just saying these things because I fear that it's not going to sound right to the people listening.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that comes from everything. My entire life up until I was diagnosed in my 40s, what I was saying was going to an audience that didn't have ADHD. So it hit people wrong. If I'm doing an ADHD podcast and videos, this is my tribe. They're going to get it. I can't say anything wrong. But it's sort of like you were mentioning, like you're being told you're communicating wrong or saying the wrong things your entire life. And it affects you. It seeps in until one day you have this moment that I had. It was yesterday. That that it's like, no, guy, you're talking to your tribe now. You don't have to worry about being wrong anymore.
I love that. That's an amazing, kind of awareness and a permission too about, context and I mean, it is there. It's also the piece of just knowing your audience, right? Just like you said, is just recognizing that there are places in our world still, and hopefully this, I mean, I know it's changing, but not nearly fast enough in my opinion, but that there's that there's places where there are certain things that are, that are safe to say, and safe to be all these, be who you are, and there's other places where you do have to kind of proceed with caution a little bit, but both Keith and I have experienced this, and it's been one of the most profound kind of eye-opening pieces of this ADHD journey for me, and I know for other people that that I have talked to in the support groups that I've done, is that piece of knowing that you're not the only one, that you're not alone in this journey, and the more you talk about your ADHD in a way that's, well, even just starting to talk about it at all is so cathartic, and it's there's so many of us who think we're the only ones, and once you start talking about your ADHD and other things, you realize that there's a lot more of it out there, a lot more people who may or may not understand totally what it is, but they're being impacted by it in some way. And so it's just, there's permission. Once you start talking about it, there's permission for other people to also talk about it, and then you are less alone, and you can open up the support networks. It's pretty life-changing, that process, I think, was for me.
Absolutely. I'd love, Mark, if you would mind sharing with us how old you are. He mentioned, thank you all, Ada, for the kind welcome, and you are more thank you. You're welcome for the welcome. Because Ada was kind enough to let me stream on my page and their page as well. I will put in a quick plug. If you are not a member of Ada, it's only something like $5 a month, I think. ADD.org. And what's neat about Ada is Renee and I both run 2 different virtual peer support groups. And you think that it's nice hearing us talk about it. Wait until you're in a group of your peers and you hear like 12 people all talking about it. Mm-hmm. So there's a quick plug for Ada there, add.org/shop, I think. I put in /store today and it just gave me a 404. So I emailed our admin assistant and I'm like, hey, I have ADD. Could you just like remap this for me?
Awesome.
He mentions he's 32, and he also gets angry as well, which I think is because of my ADD. It hurts to have depression. It involves my ADD. Yeah, I mean, damn, when I was 32, I was undiagnosed, and I definitely had anger issues. Were you angrier before your diagnosis? And by the way, I mentioned this before. I look to my left because Renee is on my screen to my left. Probably terrible camera presence.
Yeah, I'm like looking into different places, so I'm getting used to looking at the camera, and not your face is sort of in the middle. For me, no, I've never had a real anger problem, and that's been, for me, it's all been turned internally. So that's where the depression came from for me. Well, actually, that was probably, for many people, I think that's probably, especially women, they tend to get diagnosed with depression before they ever get diagnosed with ADHD or depression and anxiety. It's missed a lot, especially in inattentive type ADHD. And it's often the ADHD, which is causing the anxiety and the depression symptoms. I had a lot of other stuff going on at the time, going through a huge life crisis and, personal crisis and all kinds of things going on. But that's what actually got me to the doctor, because it got so bad, right? So I knew more about that. That's generally, what you can recognize more is the depression or the anxiety. More people are talking about that than they are about ADHD. But yeah, it was pretty profound. And so it was more, sadness and internal kind of shutting down and turning on myself. That's kind of how that's more of my MO. It's very rarely ever out to anybody else or, spilling over on everybody else. I kind of close it all up, pull it all in, and kind of self-destruct on the inside. So yeah, that's kind of how mine shows up for me.
Yeah, I got you. No, I was very angry because no one understood me. Mm-hmm. And I just knew I was right. And I mean, still to this day, there are times where I know I'm right, and I'll prove to you that I'm right. But back in my 30s, it was a much different Keith. I will just say that. It was not the softer side of Sears.
Aw, you got softer edges now, you're saying.
I do. And I know more about myself, and it really has helped me to know I have ADHD, because people without ADHD don't get me necessarily. They don't get that, this week I can be super productive, and I have been, and next week might just be terrible for me. I might not feel like doing anything. And that's actually another thing that happened in my work life is I really wound up working Monday through Wednesday and sort of taking Thursday and Friday off. But I did 45 hours of work for an average person's 45 hours of work in 3 days. And then I surfed Facebook all day.
Mm-hmm.
and I still do that with my own business. And I don't know. Mark or Annette, any questions for us? I keep looking around. Oh, Julie Reynolds. I wish you'd been in this field 20 years ago, Renee. Our family could have used your help.
Thank you, Julie. I know. I found my purpose much later in life. Thank you for being here. I love you, my dear.
Would you have wanted to be an ADHD coach at 9 years old, though? I don't know.
Why not? But, well, let's see. What would I have been? I wouldn't have been 9. I would have been 12.
Well, I was being, yeah.
Yeah, you're aging me now.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm aging myself. But actually, if nobody else has anything specific, I want to go back maybe to kind of what Mark was saying about the anger, though, that something we haven't talked about that is super underreported, understood, and it's just now starting to be included more regularly in descriptions of ADHD symptoms, and I'm hoping that's going to improve too in future screening tools. But is emotional regulation, or dysregulation technically is kind of the emotional dysregulation is a hallmark challenge for people with ADHD. And so many people just feel out of control a lot of the times, and their moods, swinging, and that also, that piece of mood swinging is also can be misdiagnosed as bipolar or other mood disorders, which, it could be that. But emotional dysregulation and kind of these extreme emotional responses to what other people might seem where it's like out of proportion to the event is a classic ADHD challenge. And so just knowing that you feel things more deeply, it's not just a perception. I mean, many people that I know with ADHD are like, you're too sensitive, you're so sensitive. And it's always a criticism, a judgment that, you're super sensitive or super emotional or, all of these things. And it just makes you feel out of control. So I think that piece is really important to kind of acknowledge and to know that that's a big part of ADHD. It's a neurochemical thing. It's a brain thing. And your body is triggered on all these different, your brain is triggered on all these different fronts. And so it can be really challenging and feel really helpless to be flooded with these emotions and overwhelmed by them and not know how to handle them. And then they can go away really quickly too if something distracts you, or you can carry on with other things. That's more like ADHD than a mood disorder, because with mood disorders it tends to stay, and it doesn't matter what's going on, you still feel that way, and or depression. So because it can be some of the differences where you can tell the difference, but super common.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm always I always think of. And I forget the guy's name, but the sportscaster on Frasier, of all things, and it'll come to me at some point. Did I mention I have ADHD?
Terrible name.
Yeah, he would do this thing where it's like, I don't know, someone couldn't find his lunch in the fridge. He's like, what? Someone stole my lunch. This is total BS. Someone's gonna pay us total BS. And he's like, oh, never mind, it's behind the Kool-Aid. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's and the other thing, and at least this has been true for me, and I don't know if it's been true for you, that I don't necessarily react as emotionally as people might expect to certain situations. Right. So if there's a death in the family, for example, my grief tends to wait 20 or 30 days. So when I'm at the funeral, I'm hugging everybody. I'm like making sure everything's going okay and everybody's doing fine, there for support. But I don't experience the feeling of loss for about 20 or 30 days. So it's like, yeah, we can be sort of more emotional than our counterparts. But I think, at least for me, there's been times where I've been less emotional at times than my counterparts. Have you ever seen that with any of your clients or in yourself?
Um, Not as commonly. I think for me, it's been more, it's not that delayed, but I am really good in a crisis. So I've had to learn this a few times personally, like really intense, scary things. I'm able to like hold it together and really kind of be, part of me wishes I hadn't had to experience those things to learn that about myself, but it's also a pretty powerful and comforting thing to know. It's like, oh, okay, so when things are hitting the fan, I can hold it together. I will fall apart in the minute that stress and anxiety kind of, the situation dissipates, and then I'm like, I just fall apart. But I can hold it together through those things, and that I think is also very common. There's tons of people with ADHD who are amazing in ERs and as firefighters, as EMTs, as anybody who is in high stress situations like that. We do beautifully because it lights up our brain, gets us triggered, gets us fired up, engaged, and gets all of the juices flowing. And really able to handle those crisis situations, and then be able to kind of shift and move on. For me, I could never do that on a regular basis because I take it all in so much, because I am so empathic and so sensitive emotionally to stuff that I have a really hard time letting go of it. So I don't think I would do well in that personally, in that kind of a position, because of the fallout afterward is so hard on me.
I gotcha.
Recovery is pretty intense.
Yep.
It takes a lot out of me.
Yep, I gotcha. Well, I don't see any other. Oh, no. Femi is back. You are 5-star.
Thank you, Femi. So are you.
You are 5-star, and I agree with that. Definitely.
Thanks so much.
This is like an ADHD nightmare for me, having like 3 streams open and looking for comments.
Yeah, that might be a bit much for anybody to be managing.
Yeah.
And I wish I could help. Mine's not showing anything, so I can't. I don't know what's wrong.
That's weird. You have to go to your page and look on videos, and that's where I'm seeing it.
Okay.
But hey, you know what? We're testing all of this stuff out, and next time we do this, I'll probably use yet another platform, because I've learned today that I don't like being at the mercy of web software. But hey, I'm a geek, right? Well,
Yeah.
if you do have a question, feel free to throw it in the comment section from wherever you're watching this, because we're streaming 3 different places. So let's talk about recharge time. Because doing this and broadcasting it to Ada and talking about, being in your tribe, so to speak, I naturally think about the conference that's coming up in 6 months. And back in 2015, I think it was, my God, 2015, I went to my first, it was then a CHAD conference. And this past year we had CHADA, or whatever you want to call it, but ADA and CHAD came together. And this coming year, a great organization called the ADHD Coaches organization is coming in. And I love going. And the first time I went, I felt like, oh my God, where have you people been all my life? Like finally people were getting me. And, I was the one getting to sessions on time and being annoyed when people came in 15 minutes late. And then I realized, holy crap, this is a thing you can actually do when you're amongst a group of ADHDers. But they always wear me out. Right. And even in those high work modes that we can get into, we got to recharge, right? And we need more recharge. Like we're not like one of those, new lithium ion batteries. Like we need a deep charge, like the old car batteries. So what are some things that you do to recharge yourself, either, after a huge event like the conference, or just in day-to-day life?
That's something I'm still working through, to be honest. I think that there's several things that really recharge me, and actually, what's interesting is that because I'm more extroverted than you are, that I can recharge by connecting with people, but in a different way. So my loved ones or my best friends. In a place, again, it's a permission to sort of And with small people, not a big group, like one person or two people, just quality time, just relaxing. I love listening to music is huge again for me, as I said before. And so I love to do that. I've been trying to use my crafty creative side to kind of recharge lately. Like right now I have two desks in here right now. I have my regular desk, and then I have this second little crafting desk that I have now shifted because my regular work desk is covered with craft supplies at the moment. So I make cards and that's where, I don't know if Julie's still on here, but she's from that side of my life. She's a consultant with Close to My Heart, which is a stamping and scrapbooking company, and then used to be a consultant with them. And I have, so much over the years of these amazing supplies, and I hardly make time to use them. So I decided to try to build that back into my life again and do that pretty regularly. But I got so excited and motivated. It's all still out on the desk. I've just been puttering on it, working on cards, and then doing other things, and then going back and working on the cards. So yes, that's one thing. And then like I really love going to the movies too, but watching TV, relaxing where my brain does not have to engage. I get lost in movies. I really love watching TV and watching movies because I can just get lost in the story and completely forget about everything in my life and everything else. So it's a really good distraction for me. I don't know that it's recharging in the sense that my brain just can go do whatever. Like it doesn't require anything of me. So I love that. And honestly, my job, coaching, I love it. It just fires me up. So I get supercharged and energized when I coach clients. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I'm the same way, and it's interesting that you point out that I'm more introverted than you, because like I'm the one that says, "Hey, let's do a Facebook Live. Let's just try this out, right?
I know.
Let's just put myself out there. Why the heck not? And if it's not perfect and my lips aren't moving to my voice, hey, who cares? At least we're sharing with the world." But at conferences, I can get overwhelmed with the number of people I'm talking to, and I'll be honest, my self-care just goes into the I'm trying to think of a different word for than what I'm thinking, but it doesn't do well.
And the toilet tank.
Yeah, toilet. There we go. That's good. And so what I do after conference every year, well, I did it this past year and I will be doing it, is I take the next week off. I'm just like, I can coach clients. Like, it's really funny. My business hours, like I will coach clients any day of the week, except Saturday. I think my loved ones would have a problem if I worked on Saturdays right now. But so coaching energizes me as well. For me, learning stuff. So I will binge YouTube rather than watching movies. It's like I have to learn everything about a certain topic. And there's just a joke around my husband's workplace about, oh, so what'd you wind up seeing on YouTube last night when you came home? And Keith was learning something. Right? I mean, he came home at one point and I was just binge watching air crash investigation because I just wanted to know why planes crash. And it was fascinating at the time.
That's awesome. I guess I hadn't really thought about that. Yeah, learning new things. I don't know. I've never thought about that as a recharging thing for me. That's interesting. Sorry, keep going.
No. I'm a lifelong learner. I love learning new stuff, and so it's a dopamine hit when I do it. Learning to me is sort of like I'm going to use the old metaphor of crack, but I hate that metaphor. It really does recharge me. Music also, reading, but again, I read nonfiction books over fiction books. Driving and listening to podcasts. I love to drive. I'm atypical ADDer in that I drive very well, but it's because I hyper focus on driving because I love the act of driving and using a stick shift and all like that. And then listening to podcasts, I'm learning something, and that can really get me recharged very quickly.
Very cool. Yeah, driving. I'm very similar in the drive. Not that I love to drive for relaxation, but I do I'm a pretty good driver, and I hyper focus as well. I notice. I think that's what my ADHD actually makes me a better driver in my case, because I'm super, like conscious of. I'm very fear motivated, so like I don't want to be causing an accident. I don't want to have an accident. I've actually experienced car accidents and some pretty traumatic situations that way. So I have some real built-in deep, cautionary tales of other people's experiences that I have internalized. But yeah, but it allows me to be a really great driver just because I do notice everything and can predict sort of what's going to happen. I sense things and see what's happening kind of before other people tend to be able to notice and react. So it makes me a really great driver in that sense, as long as I don't have too many people in the car that they're distracting. But other than that, I'm like a fabulous solo driver.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think if I'm the same way. I don't mind the distractions a little bit, but there are definitely telltale signs to how fast I'm going based on how much conversation I'm having with you.
There's a direct correlation.
I'll just leave it at that. I had a friend, well, I guess, so I'll just leave it at that and then let me continue to explain. I'll leave it at that. How's that?
That's awesome.
Well, so I brought up a few topics tonight. It seems like the comments have died down a little bit. Again, if you have a question, we do this I don't know if we're going to make it a regular every couple of months thing or not. But we so far have. If you have questions, wherever you're watching it, just put a question in the comments. But I've brought up a few things. Is there anything that's near and dear to your heart about ADHD that you might want to explore and tell the world about?
Gosh, that's a great question. I think I'm trying to think. I did have a list of things that I think one of the biggest things that many of us still struggle with, I still struggle with, is procrastinating on things and figuring out what's getting in the way of getting started. And I think it's a pretty complex issue for many of us, and there isn't one right answer. But I think that, looking at that factor, that component of, what is it for me anyway, I've learned that, actually, I know this is true for a lot of people, not just me, but to be looking at why am I avoiding X, Y, or Z, and there's certain things I procrastinate on, and often there's two factors that are the most compelling for me. Is that that it's an anxiety producing task, so I avoid the anxiety by avoiding the task, but then it gets to a critical mass, like where the anxiety over avoiding the task surpasses the anxiety of doing the task, and then I have to just oh my God, just do it, and figure out how to get started. I can't just do it, but figure out how to get started, and look deeper as to what's getting in the way. But then there's other things that are really, so then there's the emotional or the organizational component. So I don't know exactly how to get started on this thing. So I'm not getting started because I've never done it before, or I don't know how to get started. And sometimes we really forget that there are lots of steps starting something. And so figuring out maybe there's a gap, maybe one of those things I have no idea how to do step number 2 or 3. So I'm just not starting at all. Or the fear of the unknown. Like I don't know what to do at all. Or I'm not clear on what I'm trying to do. So it can be really hard to get started. But so I know that can be one of the most. It can cause a lot of pain in a lot of areas of our lives when we procrastinate things, like high stakes things, even down to just little things. So it can be super, super challenging. But I don't know if you've had any experiences where you've been able to have insights or overcome any of that. Do you have any?
Yeah, what I find with my own procrastination is it comes with sort of in 3 different areas. One is it's just something I shouldn't be doing anyway. And I hate the S word. Like the only word I really hate is should. Like just about any other word I'm fine, but I don't like shoulding. And hello, Maria from Puerto Rico. How are you doing tonight? On the ADA page. And But it really is true. There are times that my mouth writes checks that my brain just doesn't want to cash. And there are times that I've had to go, you know what? I said I would do this. I really don't want to, and I have no idea why I should be doing it, so I'm not going to do it. That's number one.
Okay. Love it.
Number two is time blindness, right? That's a huge one for me where it's like, I got to do this, and it's going to take 75 hours to do it, and I sit down to do it, and it takes 7.5 minutes.
Yeah, that really resonates.
Right, where it's just like, or I overcomplexify it or something like that, and it just becomes this huge thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had this experience a couple of weeks ago where I was off. I was going to, unexpectedly, I was going to be able to go out and do something fun. And I wanted to get through my task list. And I got through everything for the day in 20 minutes. And I was like, what the? What? Huh?
Yeah.
And the other thing for me is perfectionism. So the first episode of my podcast was called Perfect is Impossible. And something that I try to challenge myself to, and I don't always do it perfectly. If there were a drinking game, that would definitely be take a drink. It'll stop me from completing something. I'm currently looking at doing some sort of a group coaching program, and I should have had the page published a few weeks ago, but I just don't know how to do it perfectly, and I don't want to release it until it's perfect and it's going to be great and all like that, and that holds me back a lot. I'm better now that I've been diagnosed, and I can try to challenge myself to imperfection. By the way, that's going to be a podcast title, so I generally don't try to use sticky notes, but it's very rude to be typing on a keyboard while you're on a video chat. So I'll just write down, challenge yourself to imperfection.
Love it. Capture. You got to capture those moments. See, that's the other fallacy of ADHD, right? It's like, oh, I'll remember it. Biggest fat lie that we all tell ourselves. No, you won't. Not very likely anyway. So write it down. Capture it somehow. Yeah.
And you know what I just wrote under that? I drew a line and I wrote Ian work because my lovely husband tonight, we're over at my mom's house having dinner. And in the middle of dinner, he says, oh, yeah, by the way, the guy that gives me a ride to work is going to be, he's going to be.
Oh, your audio cut out, Keith.
Oh, goodness.
There, it's back.
Okay.
What did he say?
So he said, you know, my coworker is going to be out. You have to give me a ride the next Monday and Tuesday. And I'm like, I'm here eating shrimp scampi that my mom has prepared. I'm not about to whip out my phone. Could you tell me this after dinner when I can do something about it? Guess what? Neither of us remembered until just now. And so it is now also on this Post-it note that I will put into my capture system almost immediately after this Facebook Live is done.
Isn't it amazing how our brains work too? Like what triggers those things? I think that makes me think of the comments that I think that so many, I was speaking to somebody, I don't remember where it was, doesn't really matter where it was, but that she was really struggling with communication and conversations with her, family members, partner, and like all kinds of things. So like they just are like, I can't follow you. You're talking like all over the place, and people can get super frustrated with listening to some of us. Because our brains are going a mile a minute, and we're making connections between things that other people don't make connections to, and there's associations that make no sense to other people, but it opens all these amazing pathways, and I think it's one of the beautiful gifts of ADHD, especially in creative endeavors and work environments, because you can just really be able to go places and see things and figure stuff out that other people can't. But it also can be really challenging for people to follow because they have no idea how you got from A to Z or A to G in one thought, and so it can be really hard. And so being able to and you lose yourself, like lose track of what you're saying sometimes too, just because your mind goes, and learning how to rein that in sometimes and looping it back around is a skill. That doesn't happen naturally. It's a tricky challenge.
That is so true. And to me, there's really two concepts there. There is the idea that we can switch from topic to topic to topic. And I call that the 8-track player mind. I don't know if you're old enough, but I know I'm old enough to remember 8-track tapes where you pressed one, you got one song, two, the next song, three, and I've had friends that like we'll be talking about something. Maria calls her daughter my beautiful mind. I love that. I love that. I'll be talking about something, switch off of it, talk about something else, go to a third topic, and then interject something into topic one, and then back to the third, then to the fourth and the second, and my really good friends can follow that, right? But that's something that I've had to explain. I'm like, just pardon my 8-track player.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But then also the associations. When I was in the IT field, that was, and you know, I still rent my brain out for problem solving because I can look at a problem, and you can too, and it's like I'll give you 100 solutions. Bring me your problem. I will look at it. I will very quickly understand it. I'll give you 100 solutions. I don't want to do any of them.
Absolutely.
So I will just leave you to pick one. And if you need some coaching around which one to pick, I'll help you with that. I'm not going to do the work, but I'll tell you how to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, that totally makes me think of, some of the biggest challenges that many of us have at work is that exact thing that there's, we can be in jobs that expect us to go from A to Z, and we are not like, or, from conception to completion, and yet we're not wired for that. And we can feel there can be a lot of shame. Not everybody. I mean, many of us are wired for parts of it. So super into the beginning, getting the idea. Most of us actually are more in that beginning phase of generating the ideas, coming up with the big picture, and then some of us are really great at details. So pulling the pieces and, being able to look at all the fine details and see how things are connected. But kind of the wrap up part super challenging and really painful for many of us. And so it can be really hard to be in a job that requires you to do all of those things. And so many of us, who understand kind of or learn about our ADHD and how we work, figuring out if there's a work environment that doesn't require that of you, or educating your employer about, what parts you are best served to do, and hope somebody else will take on the rest, or hire somebody to do the other parts. I don't know. I think, that's the hardest part about being a small business owner is that, kind of have to be a one woman or one man show, unless you can afford to hire people to help with the other parts, but it can be hard.
Or barter with them. But yeah, so that brings two topics. It's funny. You say something and everything I need to say is two things afterwards, but, and I just lost one. No, the first one is you were mentioning how a lot of us do well as EMTs and firefighters and policemen and even lawyers. I had a conversation on the Reddit ADHD group the other day where people were surprised that ADHDers could be good lawyers, and that has to do with hyperfocus and fairness. But if you think of an EMT, you have to have someone that can walk in, quickly assess a situation. Same thing with an emergency room doc. Mm-hmm. And I will mention you touched on workplace. And so here is another plug for ADA, who is very nice of them to let us stream onto their page tonight as well. They have a workplace committee, and they are in the process of putting all the dots on the I's and the crosses on the T's to do presentations to people's workplace so that employers are starting to become more anxious to get this type of information, how to best support ADHD employees. So I think it's add.org/workplace is the URL. And if you're not an ADA member and you're watching this after the fact, please join ADA. It's only like $5 a month. And Renee and I both volunteer. It's sort of a passion for us. We, as well as being coaches, we like helping people that might not be able to afford coaching, and just sort of spreading the word about ADHD. That's the reason I do this. It's not that, I love doing it, but someone has to do it, and there's just not enough voices out there spreading the word that, hey, there's a lot of us, and no, you don't have ADHD just because you misplace your keys sometimes. There's actually symptoms that go along with that, and you need to get a diagnosis. I noticed it's about 10:25 here on the East Coast, so I'm going to issue a last call for questions. I have to say my own page, no one has written a question, so My page loses tonight, but that's okay. You guys can do better in a couple months. So if you have a question for us about ADHD or life in general, what the heck, post it wherever you're watching this right now live, and we will do our best to answer it. And if you post after the fact, here's a check we might not cash. I will say, if you post it after the fact, we'll remember to answer it during our next live stream.
Well, we can work on it. I do have a notes page in front of me, so I'll try to remember.
Yeah, but this is going to require if someone, wow, the sun something happened to the sun, and Renee was
it's windy. The blinds just they're being blown around. Sorry. It's super hot and sunny in my living room.
But this is going to require us in like June to go back and look at these comments. So
yeah.
or at least remember in like July when we do this again.
Yeah.
To do it. So last call for comments.
I see Tiffany's watching. Tiffany's one of my dearest, bestest friends. Hi, sweetheart.
Hello, Tiffany.
For being here. I was in her classroom today volunteering. This is who yeah.
That is so cool. That is so cool.
So amazing. So grateful.
Well, so let's talk about it. I mean, I like not planning much, but
shocking.
It feels right to me that maybe we just do these every couple of months. So what do you think? Should we? Let's not pick a date right now, but you think you want to do another one in like July?
Absolutely. I think I'm having a great time. I think it's super fun. And then, we will continue. And my goal is to continue to improve on my promotional abilities. I'm being able to promote it or market it a little bit more each time.
Yeah. I mean, that is true. As much as helping, we are both coaches, and this is both of us. This is our primary source of income. So if you're watching this and you're curious about coaching, go to our Facebook pages. I'm This ADHD Life. Renee is at Added Perspective Coaching. And get in touch with us. I mean, we're always looking for clients. We don't accept everyone. The fit has to be right. I know there's a client this week that I was like, I don't think you would want me as your coach, but sorry.
Yeah. It does have to be a right fit for both people, for sure. It's a pretty intense and kind of a partnership, so it does need to be right. Absolutely.
And so what I will say, if you're watching this after the fact and you want to get notified about our next event, if you go to youradhdexperts.com, there's a little place there. It'll take you actually to my This ADHD Life site, but it'll take you right to the right page. There will be a place that you can sign up to be notified. And right after this Facebook Live, I feel like I've already said I'm going to do something after this Facebook Live, but right afterwards, I'm going to add a couple fields to that form to allow you to tell us when the best time is for this type of event for you, and to let you put in a question that you might want answered.
Love that. Yeah. Topics or any kind of whatever. Yeah.
And actually, you know what? I lied. It's 10:30 here. I will do that tomorrow, first thing in the morning. I will do that tomorrow. But youradhdexperts.com takes you right to the mailing list. I see, let's see, Eugenio, hello from Mexico, Monterrey, Mexico. He abbreviated it. I'm proud. I was able to decipher it. I was recently diagnosed and taking Vyvanse. It was sort of an awakening, but still don't like being dependent, but I feel the clarity of the meds. I mean, I get it. Were I a diabetic and I needed insulin, I don't think I would like the feeling of dependence on it. This is where my coaching style may differ from yours a little bit, in that I would say, get over it. Like, if it's working for you and it is, assess that feeling of dependence that's making you feel icky. It's you need water to survive, and no one ever, someone goes around saying, man, I just wish I wasn't dependent on this water stuff. But I don't know. What's your view? We'll go over. We're going to notify the affiliates. Old joke. We're going long, but what's your opinion on this question?
I think that usually that perspective on medication, I understand it, but it's usually kind of rooted in some shame about the fact that we need something else to help us. And yes, that's super hard, and it's part of the process of kind of coming to terms with your ADHD. I don't know, we haven't talked about this at all, but the process, especially for adult diagnosis, there's a grieving process that happens with the diagnosis. There's this, it doesn't happen the same for everybody necessarily or at the same rate, but there's these phases that you go through that are very similar to grief, the grief process. It can be, even though it's elating at the same time. Like for me, it was this huge relief. Oh my God, there's a name for this thing. And if there's a name for this thing and there's all this other stuff that people know about, then it can't just be me that's having this challenge. And, it was so validating in so many ways, but it didn't negate the fact that I had to go through this whole kind of negotiating with myself and with my diagnosis, and the shame and the blame and the researching phase and the information, just kind of all of it. Anyway, I think it's part of that process. And also that message tends to come from outside of us as well. There's a lot of people who do a lot of medication shaming in general, like, why do you need that? And but again, as Keith said, if it was some other diagnosis that was way less stigmatized, like a heart condition or diabetes or wearing glasses, or they can be seen as mild irritants, and it's an expense for sure, and it's really stressful. It can be really hard to get medication, but it certainly, I think it definitely is it's a great resource and a great tool for many people if you can find the right one.
Yeah, I mean, it took me 2 years to figure out my medication mix, and I should apologize. I don't mean to be that harsh with the get over it, but it is something that you're right. It's overcoming a shame, and I didn't have that shame for whatever reason. Maybe it's because I had come out as gay, 20 plus years before I got diagnosed ADHD, where I just didn't. I wasn't about to have shame over something else, but that is true. A lot of people do have that shame. Mm-hmm. I would still say, see how you can overcome the shame, and celebrate the fact that it's working for you.
Yeah, I think that, and that piece, that acceptance piece, it also can help you open you up to other possibilities of other things that, if you're not putting energy toward that, you can be putting energy toward other things, because the medication is never a magic pill, literally and figuratively a magic pill for ADHD. There's always strategies that are needed, extra supports that need to be put in place, because there are so many variations and ups and downs with ADHD. Like, I still can't remember who said this, but somebody in our world said, that ADHD is the hallmark of being consistently inconsistent. That that there's I can do it today and I can't do it tomorrow. They can be so baffling for everybody in our lives and in our own life, and to ourselves. Like, wait a minute, I thought I had this handled, and then all of a sudden, like, it falls through the floor again. But it just depends on how much executive functioning you've used towards other things, how tired you are, how well your self-care is. Are you taking care of the basics, sleep and food and water, to manage your energy, because it is a resource that is not exponential. It definitely gets used up, and then we have to talk about that recharging that we were talking about before.
That's exactly true. If you just joined, I recommend going back and watching the video feed once it has been officially posted. I think Facebook takes a minute to do that. I will be putting this out as a podcast on iTunes and Google Play and wherever the heck you get your podcasts. I'll be putting out an audio version. You can check out my website, thisadhdlife.com, for that. And if I remember, I will actually post a link under the video feed and on your page and my page and the ADA page. I do want to thank once again ADA for allowing us to sort of take over their live feed tonight. We will be doing another event sometime in July, and if you want to get notified about that, again, you can go to youradhdexperts.com, just join the newsletter, and it will put you right in a little segment that says you want to be part of July's thing. Renee can be found on Facebook right now at the Added Perspective Coaching, right? Facebook.com/Added Perspective Coaching. Anything you want to say as we wrap up?
Well, no, just thank you everyone for being here, and thank you Keith for creating this opportunity and for continuing to support me through this stretching myself in this way. As you said, yeah, this is scary to me. Talking to a room of, well, it's not as scary as it was. It was actually really fun, not really scary today at all. It's an opportunity to get out there and to talk to people and hope that we can help, and because it is such a huge passion for both of us, as Keith said, to help other people and help you understand this thing called ADHD that is super, diverse and on a huge spectrum of challenge, and but you're not alone. And we hope that you know that and come back and check in with us and reach out to us through either of our Facebook pages or through ADA. Again, we're both facilitators for support groups there, which are just fantastic virtual support groups. So check that out as well. And
Wonderful.
soon, my website will be live soon. Working on that.
It will be. I didn't know if you were going to mention it, but since you did, I'm going to say you're going to have a website up by the time we do this next time.
Yes.
Or I'm going to be doing it in the same room with you next time.
He's going to fly all the way over here. But yeah, beat me with a wet noodle. No, seriously, it's going to be live.
Absolutely. All right, and my thanks as well to everybody that participated. Again, if you have a question that you're watching this later, just comment wherever you're watching this. We will do our best to look at it before our July stream, and we'll be back in July. And thank you for watching. And now I got to figure out how to stop this live broadcast. Have a good rest of your week, and to all the moms out there, because it is Mother's Day weekend. Happy Mother's Day. Take care.
Yes. Thank you.